Welcome to Topics in Digital Economics. My name is Paul Belflamme. In this presentation, I want to give you a brief economic analysis of patent licensing. In this analysis, we focus on incentives. We want to know whether or not it's profitable for an innovator to license its technologies, leaving aside any types of transaction costs that may arise. For example, we assume that it's costless for the innovator to find potential licensees or to write down and negotiate a contract with them. All of these costs are left aside so that we can concentrate on the profitability of giving licenses. And we consider a process innovation, that is, the invention contributes to reduce the cost of production of an existing good. Okay? Before we look at the profitability, let us note that from a social point of view, licensing is desirable. It increases value for society as a whole, for instance, by making the diffusion of existing innovations more efficient, and also by making it possible to divide labor between firms that concentrate on inventing new things and other firms that concentrate on implementing these new things. Okay, this division of labor will speed up technological progress. Okay, so from a social point of view, licensing is desirable, and so the big question is whether it will take place or not. And then that depends on the incentives of the innovators themselves. Now, what the economic analysis reveals is that the profitability of granting licenses depends on a number of factors, the main factor being whether the licensor, the patentee, the firm that has a patent, whether this firm competes or not with the potential licensees. As we will see, that makes a big difference. The nature of the competition between the potential licensees makes a difference as well, and so do the type of the licensing contract and the size of the innovation. So we want to see now how these different factors affect the profitability of granting licenses on an existing innovation. And we start with a situation where the licensor is outside the market of the potential licensees. Okay, so the patent holder, the licensor, doesn't compete with the potential licensees. And we want to understand or answer the two following questions. How many licenses should the licensor grant? And if any, under which contract? And we concentrate here on two potential contracts. A fixed fee contract, so the licensee will pay a fixed amount to be able to use the innovation, or this is the other contract, a per unit royalty contract, whereby the licensee will pay to the licensor a fixed amount per unit of the product that is produced thanks to the innovation. Okay, so there are these two possibilities. In reality, there are other possibilities, but we focus on these two here. Now, the first dividing line has to do with the size of the innovation. Okay, and you can think here of the size of the innovation as the cost reduction that this process innovation allows. Okay, so just to take a silly example, imagine that the market we are considering here is the market for producing printers. Okay, and the innovation is a new technology that allows firms that produce printers to produce these printers at a lower cost. Okay, now we'll say that the innovation is major if the reduction in costs in the production of printers is so large that a firm acquiring this innovation would become a de facto monopolist on the market for printers. Why a de facto monopolist? Because it can produce at such a low cost that no other firm can compete, can no longer compete. Okay, so that would be a major innovation. And you understand that a minor innovation would be an innovation that doesn't confer such a large cost reduction, And so it gives a competitive advantage to the firm that has the innovation, but the other firms, those who don't have the innovation, are still able to compete somehow. Okay, so the dividing line here is according to the size of the innovation. Now, if it's a minor innovation, we still need to know what is the nature of competition between the firms on the market. Is it a fierce competition among the licensees or a mild competition among the licensees? By fierce competition, we think, for example, at price competition, where consumers actually care mainly about the price of what they buy. There is not much differentiation between the products of the different firms. And here, if competition is fierce in that way, having a competitive advantage is almost having a monopoly position. Okay, so we see here that we can make a parallel between the two cases of a major innovation or of a minor innovation with fierce competition. We see that they lead to the same optimal choice for the licensor, which is to give an exclusive license, so to give a license to only one licensee, to only one firm. And in that case, the profit for the licensor would be the same whether it gives a fixed fee contract or a royalty-based contract. Okay, why giving an exclusive license? Well, the idea is quite simple. Because the innovation gives a very strong advantage to the licensee, there wouldn't be any demand for a second license. By that I mean that if a second license was granted by the licensor, then the value for the second license would be very, very low, because actually the two licensees would lose any form of competitive advantage in that case. Okay, so what I'm saying is that the competitive advantage, or the strong the strong monopoly position that can be acquired through the license only exists if a unique license is given. If a second license would be given, then it would actually neutralize the position of the two licensees. None of them would have a competitive advantage, and so they wouldn't be willing to pay for that license. Okay, so the point, I repeat, is that there is demand for a license. I mean, a licensee is willing to pay a positive price only in the case where this license is exclusive. Okay, now things are different in the case of mild competition among licensees. There, the license, or having the innovation, doesn't give such a great competitive advantage, and in that case, it may be profitable for the licensor to give multiple licenses, because there will be a demand for multiple licenses. And in that case, a fixed fee contract is more profitable. Okay, here the licensor is able to extract any additional profit the licensees make with the innovation, to extract these extra profits through a fixed fee contract. Okay, we'll see in a minute that in the case where the licensor is within the licensee's industry, the type of contract will be different, and I will explain why then. Okay, so that's the case of an outside licensor, which is rather simple in a sense. It's not really different from an input supplier in a sense. Okay, the more interesting case is this one, where the licensor is within the industry and so competes directly with the licensees. Now, the licensor has two potential sources of profits: the profit from the licensing revenues, as we had in the previous case, but also the profits that this firm makes on the product market. Okay, coming back to my example of printing machines or printers, here the licensor, the firm that has found the innovation and is the patent holder, is also a producer of printers. Okay, and so it has to take into account these two sources of profits. So the question is really here, should I license or not? Okay, and if I do license, how many licenses should I grant, and under which contract, as we asked before. Okay, but the picture has changed here. Because of these two sources of revenues, there is a big trade-off. If you focus on the revenues from licensing, you would prefer to give potentially more licenses. Okay, but if you give more licenses, you increase the competition in the market, which will potentially reduce the profit you make yourself on the product market. Okay, so to which extent do you create your own competition in order to obtain licensing revenues? This is the quick question here. And as we will see, that depends again on the size of the innovation and type of competition on the product market, but also essentially on the type of contract that the licensor can use. Okay, so we have a picture which is similar to the previous one, and again we can put together the two cases of a major innovation that gives a monopoly position on the market and the case of a minor innovation but with fierce competition among licensees. Okay, here the optimal conduct for the licensor is to give no license. Why? Well, because here the licensor, the patent holder, is exerting its own patent on the market. So this is the firm which is in a position to produce printers at a much lower cost than the other firms, and so to basically exclude the other firms from the market. Okay, so if you are in this position, why would you give to one of your competitors the same weapon as the one you're using? Why would you allow one of your competitors to produce printers at the same low cost as you have? That wouldn't be very profitable because you would lose your monopoly position, and anyway, you wouldn't be able to sell this license as this other competitor would compete fiercely with you and wouldn't gain any extra profit from doing so. Okay, so clearly there you have no incentive whatsoever to give licenses, because this would amount to losing your strong position on the market. So the only possibility where a license could be profitable is when the innovation is minor, so the reduction in the production cost of printer is not that large, and if the competition on the market is not too strong. For example, if firms compete in quantities rather than in prices. Now in that case, the theory shows us that the best conduct for the licensor is to grant multiple licenses, possibly to all its competitors, okay? But to do so by granting a royalty-based contract, okay? And why a royalty-based rather than a fixed fee contract, which was, if you remember, the conduct to follow for an outside licensor? Why using a royalty-based contract? Well, the idea is the following. If the licensees have to pay per unit of the product they sell, sorry, let me start again. If they have to pay the access to the technology by paying a royalty, so this is an extra amount for each unit of the product they sell, well, it's as if their cost of production was first decreased by the fact that they can use the new technology, but increased artificially by the fact that on each unit they've got to pay a fixed amount to the licensor. Okay, so the point here is that the licensor, because it is competing with the licensees, the licensor would like to keep its competitive advantage. Okay, it's using the technology itself, it can produce printers at a lower cost, and it would like the other firms not to produce printers at the same cost. They would like, the licensor would prefer the licensee to produce at a higher cost. And this is what the royalty is actually achieving, artificially raising the cost of production of the licensees while granting extra revenues to the licensor. Okay, so in a sense, by doing this, the patent holder, the licensor, is winning on two fronts. It's extracting licensing revenues from the other firms while preserving its own competitive advantage on the market. Okay? So let us summarize what we have learned in this presentation. First of all, patent licensing is socially desirable. But it's not because it's socially desirable that it will necessarily happen, because that needs also to be profitable from a private point of view. The innovator needs to find licensing profitable. This profitability depends on a number of factors, and mainly on whether the licensor competes or not with the licensees. If the licensor doesn't compete with the licensees, then we've seen that the licensor will grant one or several patents under fixed fee contracts. But if the licensor directly competes with the potential licensees, then the licensor may decide to give no license whatsoever, and if it does give licenses, then it's going to prefer royalty-based contracts. If you're interested in reading more about this topic, I can point you to the textbook in Industrial Organization that I've published with Martin Peitz, and there you should look at sections 18.1, 3 to 5. For now, it's goodbye. Thank you.